Okay, so in standard profiles, as we have seen, that we can just edit a few things, right? Like the applications which are visible and the tabs which are visible to the profile, right? For custom profile, we saw that we can view the other things also. So here is the list of profiles under setup, manage users profiles, right? Okay, right. So this is a standard profile, and we do not have, if you see, we just have the option of editing the visible apps and visible tabs. All right, and we don't have an option of editing anything else. You see that we cannot add, edit the admin permissions. We are not able to edit general user permissions. We are not able to edit object permissions, right? However, at the same time, if it was a custom profile, then we had that option. So if I just go to profiles and look into any of the custom profiles, or if you create a profile on your own, you will have that option of editing the other details also, like admin permissions and general user permissions and stuff like that. Okay, so if I take any of the custom profiles like this one, click on edit. If you scroll down, you will see that you have the option of editing the admin permissions. Okay, general user permissions, that's there, and object permissions. Okay, got it. So that's about profiles. Got it. So now, by now, what we understand with a profile is it's collection of permissions, as I said, collection of permissions, and is assigned to a user, right? So let's make it more simple. Collection of permissions given to a user. All right. And every user needs to have a profile. So primarily, what are we talking about? We're talking about that every user will have a profile, and a profile will have a few permissions inside it. And a user's what a user can do or what he cannot do, that depends on the profile that he has. As simple as that. Got it? So basically, the primary set of permissions that a user has comes from the profile. Okay, and same profile can be given to multiple people. So now if there are 100 people, and I need to control their permissions and all. So instead of going and controlling permission for each and individual user, what I can do is I can just have those um, profiles created for different set of users. Let's say if I have a set of users who are like the sales professionals, and then I have another set of users which are like marketing professionals. Okay, so in that way, what can be done is that you just create one profile, give it to multiple users. All the set of sales users, you can just create one profile for them and you can give it to them. Got it? So that is how it works. All right. So that's about profile. Now the second thing that we're going to talk about is a permission set. Okay. So what's the permission set? Permission set is, what is a permission set? Permission set is again a collection of permissions, as the name suggests. But this is optional for a user. Like every user needs to have a profile, but this is optional. Okay, so a user may or may not have a permission set. All that a user needs primarily is the profile. Okay, then what is permission set? Permission set is an optional thing, and this is used for giving additional permissions. Okay, so this is used for giving additional permissions. Why do we use permission set? Because in case, think about it, let's say we all work in the same team. Okay, so and we all have the same profile. Now what I want is let's say Amish is one guy who is working on uh, one more project apart from our projects of our team. He's also working on some other project. Okay, and he needs additional access. Correct. So if we all have the same profile, access and permission for everyone is same, right? Now he has started working on one more project and he needs some extra access. Okay. Now the company wants to make sure that whatever extra access he gets, let's say a few extra permissions he gets, should not be available to others in the same profile. Correct? So we all have, let's say, one profile called profile one. We all have same profile. Okay. Amish needs extra access, extra permissions. Okay, you need a few extra permissions. That permission can be anything. Okay, so think about it as maybe permission to see some extra applications or some extra objects, whatever. Okay, now he needs this extra permissions, but company wants to make sure that only he gets those extra permissions. Okay, so that is there. So in that case, Amish needs some extra permissions, and I want to make sure that only he gets extra permission, which means if I put those permissions in the profile, if I put those additional permissions in the profile, then what will happen? Everyone will get that, because profile is available to everyone, all of us. So in that case, what I'll do is I'll create a permission set to give additional permissions. This is like a top up. So you have a base plan on mobile and then there is a top up, right? So everyone who has activated that base plan does not get it. Only people who get that top up, or that plug-in kind of thing for a software, right? That kind of a concept. So only people who need it, you can create a permission for that, for those permissions, and give it only to specific users. So it will not be applicable on all the users of the profile. So that is the only thing that a permission set will do, right? Profile is also collection of permissions, but this is primary set of permissions which every user needs to have. Permission set is collection of permissions, not necessary, not required for every user. However, if a user requires additional permissions which are not required by other people of the same profile, then we can create a permission set and give it to them. Okay, makes sense. Now let's quickly see how do we create a permission set. Just above this profile, under this manage users option, you have permission sets. So you do not have any standard permission sets. As you can see, for profile we had standard profiles, right? But for permission set we do not have any of the standard permission sets. You can just create one. So permission set will always be a custom permission set. There is nothing called a standard permission set. You just create one permission set, click on save. Okay. Now here you add the permission. So permission, what permission you want to give? You want to give some object permissions, assigned app permissions, app permissions. So whatever permission you want to give, you can do it from here. So let's say object permissions you want to give. You want a permission to visit or create data in certain object. You can do that. So let's say I want to give a permission of creating and deleting data in campaign, which otherwise is not available to the user. Let's say. So I can put this permission. So here we will be dealing with permission one by one. Okay. So this is one permission to access campaigns object, read, create, edit, delete data in campaign object. Yeah, these four permission on campaign object is what I put in this permission set. Okay. The same way you can put more permissions in this permission set. Got it? So anyone now who gets this permission set will be able to do the following things on campaigns. You can add more permissions also. Right, in this permission set. If you want to add more object permissions and all, you can just do that. Okay, so let's say this part is done. Now this is what we have done. Our permission set is ready. How do I give the permission set to the user? How do I assign a permission set to the user? It's very simple. Just go to the users, click on the user, click on the user name, basically name of the user. Don't click on edit. Scroll down. You will see permission set assignment. Just after the general user information, you will have permission set assignment. So you will have the option of assigning the permission set to the user. Now you can just click on edit assignment, select the permission set that you want to give to this user, and say save. That's it. Okay, and one user can have multiple permission sets also. The same way, if you want to give one more permission set to this user, you can create that and assign it to this user. Okay. Here on the concept of profile and permission set. So profile, basic collection of permissions every user will have. Permission set, collection of permissions not required for every user. can be there if the user needs additional permissions which are not there in his profile. So that's there. That is about the permission set. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about, so far we have talked about the permissions, the general permissions a user has and not. Okay. Now, next thing that we're going to talk about is data sharing. Data sharing. Data sharing is a simple concept where we are talking about whether a particular user in a company would share his data with others or not. Sharing data means if I am the owner of the records, will you be able to see my data or not? Okay, so that completely depends on nature of that object, what kind of a data is actually getting into that object, what kind of business processes we have, what kind of business process we have, and also what sort of an environment we work in. All right, and how sensitive the data is. So depending on all those things, you will decide whether data is going to be private to the owner of the record, or is it going to be public. You must have seen that whenever we create a record, there is an owner assigned to it, right? Every record has an owner. So we have an option of making the data private as well as public in Salesforce. Private means only owner will see that record. Public means everyone in the company will see that record, right? So that is basically the concept of data sharing. So if you want to share the records with everyone in the company, make it public. If you just don't want to share the records with everyone in the company, just keep it private. Got it? So we understand what's private and what's public, right? Private is only owner will get to see. So now we have the option of setting that private or public for every object. Fine. So you can say that accounts will be private, which means maybe only the owner of an account will get to see the account. Other people in the company will not get to see the accounts owned by someone else. Um, Opportunity I can keep public, which means everyone will get to see all the opportunities. Leads I can keep public, contacts I can make private. So that ways, it's your decision, or as I told you, completely depends on how your business makes decision to keep the data private or public, right? Depending on the actual information which is stored in the table, and depending on the way your company does business, they will decide whether they want to keep the data private or public, right? So now we'll see how do we make the data private or public. Okay. To make data private or public, you just have to go to setup, security controls, sharing settings. Okay. So this is all about sharing the data. So it's available under sharing settings. This is called sharing settings. Okay. So in this sharing setting, the first concept that we're going to talk is the organization wide default. Org wide default. This org wide default is the default rules for the org, where you define whether the data in a certain object is going to be private or public. Just what we talked about. Whether you want to make data of an object as public or private, that is what org wide default is. Right? Just click on this.
org by default. Okay, and you will see a list of all the objects which are there in your Salesforce org, starting from all the standard objects to all the custom objects that you have created. Everything comes under this, and you have to define for each object whether you want to keep the data as private or public. Private is a simple concept, only the owner of the record will get to see the record. Public is everyone will get to see the record, right? So now this is org wide default setting, where you say that okay fine, throughout my organization I want to make data of a certain object as private or public. Okay, so this needs to be defined for the entire org. Okay, so if you make data private for, let's say, leads, if you make leads private, then leads will be private throughout the org. Okay, which means um, only the owner of a particular lead will get to see that lead. Okay, other people in the company will not get to see that, see the leads. If you make it public, then everyone in the company will get to see all the data, all the leads. Okay, so that is how it is. So in org wide sharing defaults, we define this whether we want data of a certain object to be private or public. Okay, let's say again, let's take a small example. Let's think about this. Let's say all five of us, we are all a part of, let's say, the sales team only. Okay, let's say we are all part of sales team. Okay, we all have access to accounts and opportunities. From our profile, we have got access to accounts and opportunities. That's fine. Accounts are public. Everyone can see all the accounts. Okay, but opportunity we do not want to make public. The business wants that I should not be able to see Archana's opportunities. Archana should not be able to see Pearl's opportunities. She should not be able to see Manisha's opportunities, that way, right? Because the business feels that if we look into each other's opportunity, then there will be some conflict of interest or something, some problem occurs, let's say. So, and the business strictly wants that I should only see my opportunities and I should not see the opportunities of other people. So what we can do is we can keep account as public, opportunity I can make private. So then what will happen? Opportunities will become private. Only the owner of the opportunity of a certain opportunity will get to see those opportunities. Got it? Okay. All right. So that's one setting, org by default. Okay. In the sharing setting, so first thing that you do is you define the org by default for the entire organization, whether the data in a certain object is going to be public or private. So that is done. Now, there's another thing called sharing rule. This is used for defining exceptions to OWD. This org by default is also called OWD. Let's say we have defined that private or public logic. Okay, and we have made some data private. If it is public, then there is no problem. Then you don't need to define any exception. Okay, but now if you have made the data private, let's say opportunities we have made private, and now Manish is going on leave for a month and the company wants me to access his data as well. Now we need an exception there. It's an exception. Generally, I don't have access to his data because the data under opportunity is all private. The owner, he will see it, but he's gonna go on a leave for some time, and for that time the business wants me to have a look on his opportunities, keep a track of his opportunities. Okay, so now this is an exception.
So to deal with that exception, we define sharing rules. Okay, so there is something called a sharing rule. If you scroll down here on the same page, you will have sharing rule. Okay, now you can define sharing rule for every object, but we, let's say if we are dealing with opportunity thing, then we should go and define opportunity sharing rule. And I can define a new opportunity sharing rule where I can say that okay, give permission of the records of a certain user to the other user. Okay. Use these sharing rules to make automatic exceptions to your organization-wide sharing settings for defined set of users. Okay. So in case you have made the data, in case your data is public, see from organization by default, we either make data private or public. If it is public, then the situation does not arise at all, right? Then that exception wala situation does not arise. So there is no question of an exception and stuff like that. If the data is private, then only this situation comes, right? So if a certain object is private and someone needs permission, which he does not have, then we will go and create a sharing rule. So you can just name it something. Let's say sharing rule 1, and okay, then select your rule type. Okay, what data you want to share is based on record owners or based on some other criteria, right? The data that you want to share with someone is based on a record owner or based on some criteria. So if you select based on record owner, you can select which let's say whose data you want to share with whom. Let's say I want to share the data of uh, chief operations officer with SVP sales and marketing. Okay, so here what I'm doing is data that needs to be shared, all the data which is owned by this guy. Okay, who it needs to be shared with this guy, SVP sales and marketing. All right, so that's based on record owner. Sometimes it may happen that you need to share the data based on some other criteria, not exactly on the record owner criteria. Let's say all the data of a certain country or all the data with a certain stage. So then you can say based on criteria. Okay, let's say all the opportunities where the stage is equals closed lost, let's say. I just want to make that data public, so I want to share it with everyone. So share it with CEO and all his subordinates. So that can also be a situation, right? So this is how you define an exception to your OWD. Which data you want to share, with whom you want to share, define that. What level of permission you are talking about? Just want to give a read-only access or a read-write permission, just define that. Finally save it, and that should be done. Correct? So that's how it works. Alright, so these are two things which we have in sharing settings. OWD, where you make data private or public, and this OWD, as the name it suggests itself, is applicable on the entire organization. However, if you want to define any exceptions for a small set of users or a particular user, then just go ahead and work with your sharing rules. Okay, used for defining automatic exceptions to OWD. Okay, so by now what we have done is we have talked about four concepts. Concept number one, profile, the basic set of permissions that a user needs to have. Okay, and profile determines what a user will be able to do. Right. Permission sets, additional permissions, optional. Then we got into sharing settings. Sharing settings has two things here. One is OWD. One is OWD, where you make an object as public or private, and the second is sharing rule. Second is a sharing rule where you define automatic exceptions to OWD. Alright, so clear on this? Profile, permission set, sharing settings. Okay. Now, depending on your requirement, whatever you want to control, you will just go to that particular thing and control the permissions. Okay. So if I say, let's say I'm talking about a certain group of users. I'm talking about a certain group of users, and I say that okay, then this group of users should not have access to opportunities. Let's say, okay, that's a requirement. So you start thinking about whether the group of users which we are talking about, which I want to restrict the opportunity permission or give the opportunity permission. Is that something which is required on the entire profile? If it is for the entire profile, just go to the profile, edit that permission, whatever is required. If you see that no, this is not for the entire profile, it's only for a certain users or a small set of users, then work with the permission set. Okay. Anything which has got to do with the data sharing, that I should not see your data and you should not see mine, that sort of thing. In that case, just take help of sharing settings. Okay. So OWD will help you set an organization-wide rule. Okay. For the entire organization, making the data private or public. Sharing rule will help you define any exceptions to that organization-wide rule that you define. Got it? Clear? So these are 1, 2, 3, 4 concepts that we have talked so far. If you remember these 4 concepts, I think that will be really, really helpful for you. And the next thing that we're going to talk about is data admin permissions. So though we have talked about OWD and sharing rules, there's another concept which we have to understand, which is called a data admin permission. What is a data admin permission? Data admin permission is a very simple thing. What is that? It's basically permission given to people who need admin level permissions. Let's say um, there's a reporting analyst. Think about it. There's a person called a reporting analyst in the in a company, and this reporting analyst needs access to all the data. Okay, no matter what is said in the OWD, whether the data is made public or private, whatever, this guy needs to have access to all data. Okay, So he should not get affected by whether you have set it to public or private. So in that case, what we'll have to do is we'll have to give him data admin permissions. Okay? What's a data admin permission? A permission to view all or modify all records. So there are two data admin permissions: view all, modify all. Okay. View all is a permission which allows to view all the records in an object. Okay, and if someone has a view all permission, he will view all the records in that object, even if the data is public, even if the OW is set to even if the OWD is set to private. If it is public, then to everyone gets to see it. But if it is set as private, then also a person with view all permission will get to see all the records in that object. Okay. Modify all, as the name suggests, will allow you to modify all the records in an object. Alright, so that is how it is. View all and modify all. So how this permission is given? This permission is given through the profile. So if you see it in the profile, under the object permission, you have these two permissions called view all and modify all. See, view all, data admin permissions, view all and modify all. So any profile user who has a view all permission or a modify all permission through his profile for a certain object will be able to see all the records in that object, irrespective of what OWD says. Okay, so for people like data, for people like administrators, or for people like top level management people, or people like reporting analysts who need to generate a report or see a record, set of all the records to be able to create reports. Anyone who needs access to all the records, for them, just go and give them view all permission or modify all permission. Alright, so these are the people who should not get affected by the OWD. So that's what it does. Okay, check these boxes. If this in this column, if you want to use this with this profile to have view access to all records of the selected object type, regardless of sharing settings for that object. Got it? So that is the other thing. So there will be certain users who will still need permission to all the objects, no matter what OWD has to say or what is the sharing setting there. And for those users, we have this view all and modify all permissions. Okay. So that's just one more concept. So that's it. Please let me know if anyone has a question on any of these concepts: profile, permission set, sharing settings, okay, and data admin permissions. Clear on this? Any questions or doubts?